Hey, welcome back to another PianoTales Podcast. I'm your host, Amelia Fong, and I'm really excited for our special guest today. Her name is Michelle Lau. She is a pianist and educator, as well as a social media content creator. I actually found her on Instagram a while back, and I've just always enjoyed her content. It's really refreshing. She also has a resource called the Open Score, which is for educators to use, enrich their skills and their tools as well. So I'm really excited to talk to Michelle and just to kind of pick her brain, see what inspired her to teach, to do content creation, and then overall like how she is able to balance like fun, creativity with the rigor that also comes with learning an instrument too. Let's give it up for Michelle.
Hi Amelia.
Hi. It's so good to see you. How are you?
It's so good to see you. We're doing well. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm pretty good this morning. Yeah, thank you for like just taking time to meet and like chat. I'm just doing like a short podcast for my piano academy that I work for. It's actually a remote academy. It's based in San Jose, California. And I kind of run a department called PianoTales that I've been starting to build with my students and some of the faculty, where we're just getting to know other people, but the heart of it is just to like have our, pianists learn to connect with like the story of their music, make it more than just the notes on the page. So we're trying to find that balance with them. Like, introduce yourself, give a little bit of background to you and your musical background and what you've been up to currently.
So my name's Michelle Lau. I'm a pianist, content creator, and performer and teacher. So in terms of my musical background, I have a undergrad and master's in piano performance. I've been playing piano for basically like all my life and more or less teaching for half of it as well too. So that's looking like it's been a while with the piano. It's been a great relationship. In terms of what I've been up to, I've taken a little bit of a small seat back in terms of social media because I'm just trying to find a new pathway in terms of how I want to present material. I want to go a little bit more into the skits realm and something a bit more in the still edutainment, but not necessarily as direct. Just because I want to feed a bit more into like my own creative interests. So that's like the really latest scheme of stuff that I've been doing. But in terms of other stuff, I do run the Open Score, which is an online resource for musicians, educators. And my goal with that originally was to share the knowledge that I've had in terms of being a healthy musician, not getting injured, having healthy mindsets, performance medicine, and psychology. It started there as its little kind of root growth, and then it kind of sprung into like a whole bunch of other stuff as it started to evolve. So that's been a really fun journey.
Especially with the piano, like it's like a lifelong journey, honestly. So I totally feel you there. And that's cool that you're like heading more into the skits realm, because I know you like were doing that with your other channel that I had like brought up to you. Is it going to be with that channel still, or is it going to be like your own thing?
I don't know. I do have that second channel like you mentioned, which is called Two Sharps, One Flat. So that was originally, that was born basically out of the pandemic, as most things were. So I was craving for that sense of community again with musicians, but to not be as serious, to have it to be lighthearted, to be fun, to have a bit of discovery and allow it to be accessible for other people to kind of get their toe dip into the classical music world. So that's where the skits and the more fun stuff kind of came into play. I haven't yet decided if I'm going to kind of merge the two a little bit, or go back to Two Sharps, One Flat and have it specific content there, or to do more cinematic related things onto the Open Score. I would like to be able to communicate what it's like to be a musician, the things that we learn in terms of being an artist, being a human, learning how to collaborate, and also have it to be educational. Like if I can slip in a few like piano tips and tricks here and there, I think that'd be a lot of fun.
I really like that you're approaching it not just from like an educational perspective, but just like to discover and to like have fun with the material. Because I feel like especially with classical music, there's like this barrier where it's like, okay, classical music is like very intense. It's like professional and very, you have to be perfect. So I feel like that's really cool that you're like trying to build maybe your skits around that to kind of open that up. Because I feel like maybe to kids or parents or other people who listen to it, they feel like there's a barrier to entry. So I feel like making it lighthearted and fun and just kind of playing around with it can make it more accessible to people. I don't know, is it like kind of your
Yeah.
goal and everything, just to kind of make things more lighthearted?
Yeah, and not only just lighthearted, but like there is that elitist and kind of intimidation factor when it comes to classical music. And I think there is a portion of classical music or a part of classical music that is like that, because when you're playing to a very high standard, your standards are gonna have to be really high. There is a certain type of intensity, there is a certain type of dedication required. But I also believe in that while you need to work hard, while you need to focus, while you need to learn, and you need to be intense, so to speak, it can also have a feeling of playfulness and lightheartedness, and an approach that where that intimidation and that focus and that drive and ambition doesn't bog you down, that it can energize yourself, your music, and other people. And because you got to feed that fire, you got to keep it going. Classical music isn't easy. It is fun. There are easy parts to it, but just like everything else that you want to dedicate a craft to, there are challenges, and you want to keep the spirit up.
I really like that last part you said, like you want to keep the spirit up, because like with anything that you take on, like there are going to be major challenges that you're going to face, and it really doesn't matter the genre either. But yeah, like if you can keep the spirit up by also like enjoying it too, I feel like it goes a long way. How do you like balance that with your students? Because I know you teach. So I'm sure, is that something like you try to remind them? Because I know you probably work to make sure they're like staying dedicated to their studies, but also making sure that, you're not getting too bogged down by like, oh, like this is a lot. How do you try to balance like the two?
Yeah, it can be a difficult balance, and I think I speak on behalf of most educators that being, especially in the arts, not only teaching, you end up also kind of going a little bit into like the counselor mode, or sometimes you need to also educate parents on what's going on too. It's being an artist and working in music is an all-rounded thing. It's not like math where you just like plug in a formula and then you can play your scales. To an extent that is there, but you also need a particular mindset. You want to be mentally and emotionally prepared in a certain way. So for me, it's very specific to every student, but some general things that I can maybe talk about is, if we're kind of gearing towards kids, is first figure out what their disposition is kind of like. I mean, if they have a disposition that makes them a bit more of an observer, some people might say like, oh, they're a little bit more shy, or they're a bit more cautious or something. You want to maybe not just like throw them into something because their system will be shocked, but kind of model for them how you might want to coax them out into a place that gets them to explore, to not be afraid of mistakes. And if they do make a mistake, to model for them like a healthy way of going about the mistakes, so that they're not scared and fearful. And so play is a really good way of that, just having games, setting up an environment where mistakes are allowed, or that there isn't ever really a mistake to begin with. And then also, if I find that some students have high standards, just innately they have high standards for themselves, and there's two types. They'll take the high standards and they'll run with it, and it like fuels them, and then there's another type where it will shut them down. So if those high standards shut them down, then either I will go into the route of showing them like it's okay to have those high standards, but if it doesn't meet your standards, don't let it shut you down. Here are some mindsets that can help you in framing certain situations in a way, because I think music is a lot about mindset. I mean, yes, it's about talent, it's about hard work, but if you have a mindset that disempowers you, that keeps you from play, keeps you from learning and discovery, like it's not really going to help you. In terms of getting them to like practice or whatever, for me, I try to find something that the student might be interested in. Like if I notice a student is really into drawing, then we're going to draw a lot in our music. It's just an access point. Like you want to find their access point. If a student really loves goals, give them goals, like really clear-cut goals. If a student loves working for stickers, give them those stickers. The power of stickers is amazing for kids. It was amazing for me as well. And I like to use lessons not only in a way on showing them how to practice in a effective way, whether it's intellectually, technical wise, or whatever, but to keep the energy up in terms of discovery and play and experimentation. Perfectionism, like it'll kind of come, we'll never reach it, but if you can keep up that attitude that you can keep trying, you keep experimenting, and you keep trying to learn, you'll get closer and closer to that. And I try to use lessons as a way to kind of pick up their energy. It's like a refuel. so that it drives them through the week. Because if the lesson is going to be shutting them down, like they ain't going to be practicing.
In a way.
Yeah, so it's like a little gas station in a way that I look at lessons sometimes.
Good way to put it, yeah, especially if you only see them once a week, like that's their moment to like connect with their teacher, connect with the music on a deeper level. And the rest, like I guess the rest of the week they're just kind of on their own. So it's hard to get that, like self-motivation. So you kind of have to like get them all ramped up for the rest of the week to practice.
I'm interested in what can happen in their practice session, and I think it's also important to let the student know that if they get stuck in their practice, that they're not alone. I tell them like write down what problems you have and we'll talk about it in the next lesson. That doesn't mean like leave it to your teacher to solve your problems for you.
Yeah.
But sometimes, kids will just get so frustrated and they just simply don't know and don't have the tools. And I'm not in the practice session with them, so sometimes I don't know what the hell is going on either. So to know that they can have someone to fall back on just keeps their confidence up as well.
I think confidence is a huge thing because like especially when they're on their own, like they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I think this is wrong. I think I'm just going to stop. Like, I'm just not going to practice and I'll wait until, next week.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a really big thing to play into. And like when you build that trust with them, because it sounds like you're very good at like establishing that trust with your students. Like you have to get in tune with who they are, like know how they're wired, know their strengths, know their weaknesses, and you'll know how to approach them to like keep them confident, keep them self-motivated. What are like I was curious because you mentioned like you do games too with your students. What are some examples of like some games that you like to do with your student?
I like to do really tactile stuff. It also depends on their age. So I'm talking about maybe like 5 to 7-ish. Some specific games that I like to do if we're working on the staff.
Yeah.
This is also like a personal story. I never understood the staff as a kid because I had a teacher who just had it on like 2D paper and they're like, here's lines and spaces and you get to work like, these are the steps. So a step is from a line to a space. Now in my head, I couldn't actually like understand the space between the lines. What I saw was like a black line and a white bar and a black line and a white bar. So I was like, where is this space, right? So what I do for some of the games is like I'll have a whiteboard and I've cut out like you can use string or any of that stuff, but I cut out really small black felt pieces that act as the staff lines and they're a bit raised. And then I'll get like little cute figurines that kids love, whether dinosaurs, cards, or like, I don't know, tiger erasers. They get to choose. And we'll set them onto our staff that we've made. Yeah. And I get to show them that the actual eraser can sit on the staff line or it can actually go between the two lines, and that's where the space exists, which is what I needed as a kid. And then we'll just have like, kids love competitions and they love beating their teacher. So I'll have a dice, like, the really big dice that they can just chuck and like choose them a number.
Yes.
Yeah, they love that stuff. And then I'll have like a little flashcard that will have a series of notes either going up or down. So then once they roll the number, I prompt them and say, are we going up or down the staff? And let's say it goes up and they roll the number 6, then they'll have to take their little eraser, and it's like a little board game, and they'll have to move up the staff 6 steps or back down. And it's those tactile things. And then sometimes, depending where we are and how I've kind of primed them into the stages, we'll start adding solfege to it.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So everything, I try to connect in a very holistic way, like everything happening at once. So those are some fun games. That's a fun game that like a lot of my students like. We do that on the piano too, when we're learning like steps and skips and like finding all your C's and D's and things like that. I do a lot of beat work. So they're not really games, but it gets them moving and away from the piano. So we do a lot of beat hierarchy, like one part of your body is going to be tapping on half notes. Your hands might be doing like the quarter notes to keep track of stuff, and then you're going to be speaking in rhythmic solfege, whatever the rhythms are on the page. Obviously, I don't throw them all in with like 3-step hierarchy, but we like build it up.
Yeah.
And they just like kids love repetitive like motion, so they just inherently love rhythms anyways. And I get them to dance around while they're doing that too. So kids love that, and you just keep it fun, keep it playful.
Yeah, especially like when you involve them in. I like the staff thing that you said, because I realized that with some of my students, like I guess I never had that issue growing up, but it wasn't until I started teaching the staff that some of my students cannot like actually grasp like these are the lines and then the spaces is what always trips students up. And I was always like, it's really interesting. And it wasn't until I would like not color code it, but show them like actually like take, things and like write it out and be like, hey, like, like imagine like and you have two sticks and you like stick something in between, there's an empty space. And they're like, oh,
Yes. Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah.
That clicks for a lot of people. The other thing that I had trouble with is, you know how, like, if you have it on paper and you're putting like a whole note onto a line, when I was young, the teacher would be like, and here's a note on the line, and they put it on the line. Right. In my head, I'm like, it's not on the line. It's literally going like through the note. Like, how does that make sense? And it wasn't until I started, you know, like doing more tactile things with my students that I was like, oh yeah, I literally am placing this note on that line, and it clicks for them much more easily.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way, like how you present the information, especially like you're saying it's 2D, like it literally looks like it's going through the note, through, when really it's like on the line, which I think is interesting because like especially when you introduce the games, it can take away from like just the pencil, the paper, because like that's just one way we absorb music. But I feel like especially with kids, everyone learns differently. Like you have to find all these different ways to get something to click, and then as soon as they like have that light bulb moment, they're like, oh, I get it. You're like, oh my gosh, that's what I needed. Like,
it ends up being like a full body sensation where like I understand rhythm now. Like I understand what eighth notes feel like versus just counting one ands and two ands. So once you find that thing that settles with them, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's like a big like aha moment, which I love. It's like the best feeling for any teacher or student. So
it is very rewarding for the student and the teacher, definitely.
A little bit just about your content creation. I was just curious, like because I know you've been educating, you've been playing piano for a while. What made you want to do content creation? It's
like a mix of two things. I think even as a teenager, when like YouTube first started coming out, and we're talking about like the major OG like crowd of YouTube, I had something in me where I knew that I kind of want to do that too. Like having vlogs and stuff would be like a lot of fun. So then there was that, I think for me, I already kind of had a little bit of that seed there, and I just didn't know which outlet to have. And also at that time I was very young, so like we didn't have like cell phones cameras as good quality, and we didn't have cameras as good quality and easy as accessible as we do now. And then it came into university where I got injured in about second, third year, and I had to do a lot of like research on my own on how to not get injured again and how to like work and learn how to practice and do all these things. So there's a lot of self-learning going on. And I'm very grateful that the community now in music is much more open to speaking about like being injured or having any mental health issues around music. Back in my day, like it wasn't it was a little bit more taboo, much more taboo than it is now. So I didn't want anyone to have gone through the same thing that I did. So I thought, well, if I'm already doing all this research, because I'm in university right now and all this stuff is accessible to me, and I'm feeling lost, there must be at least someone else out there who has or is going through the same thing. So the best way to do that is I have a phone with a cell phone. I have these resources. The best way to reach internationally or as wide as I can is to start having videos. So that's when I started kind of making my videos on YouTube, and I started getting views there, and then Instagram started kind of also on the rise as well. And there wasn't as good of a community that we have now where we can just like upload our practice videos or a little practice snippet. If that was available back in my day, like that would have been amazing. But as I started seeing people kind of posting a little bit more about music and posting about little things here, I was like, well, what can I do with this platform? What can I do to share? What can I do to just form a community outside of just my university and my practice room? So it was basically where my content, or I started content creation, was from those two things. One, that I was already interested in it in some way, shape, or form, and two, I had like a goal and a motive. It's
really interesting because I think I had watched one of your podcasts or like a snippet of one of your videos, and you were talking about like injury, like that topic essentially. You know, that's really interesting to know. Like that's kind of like where it was born out of, especially like with our generation. Like I feel like our generation has always been so like we got the birth of YouTube versus social media. So I think it's really cool. Like you can find a community if you ever feel lost or whatnot. Like you can go on to Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and find a ton of people who like share similar ideas with you and just like have that community for each other. I've been talking to like a couple other people like through these interviews, and like they have the same thing. Like they feel very connected to their like little community, which I think is really important, especially as pianists, because somebody had brought up like piano can be like a lonely sport, a lonely instrument.
Yes.
So when you have that community, like it helps so much, even for like students, because like they're alone. They don't have a family member who can practice with them or be with them, like it can feel lonely at times.
Absolutely. I hadn't realized how lonely being a pianist can be until I started widening my range in terms of other musicians with other instruments, like violin, cello, clarinet. Like inbuilt into their instrument, they have to be working with someone, even if it's just in like a collaborative pianist or whatnot. And then they have orchestra available to them too. So it's inbuilt to have that community, whereas with a pianist, like we kind of have to work at that a little bit harder. And our like massive amount of rep doesn't help with like not isolating us into our practice rooms.
Yeah, that is true. I was always so jealous, like, because I also did I did ensemble, so like I had I do saxophone and bassoon, and I was always like, oh, so fun, I got my little group. And then eventually in college I just really stuck to the piano. I'd be alone and I'd see other people practicing. I'm like, oh, yeah, they're so cool, you're practicing together, like let me go find a duet partner.
As a bassoonist, you'll have your bassoon like little section even in orchestra, whereas like a piano is an orchestra itself, so your orchestra is you. So it's like, my section is me.
I know, it's true. Yeah, it's kind of lonely. Like I love the sectionals, like then they all have their own vibe, and then the pianist's like, just do my thing, like.
Yeah.
Well, I just have a couple fun questions. I think I also include too, if you're able to answer them. I know it can be difficult for some people, but maybe one of them is, who is your favorite composer? And then the second one is, I don't know if you've had any like favorite pieces that you've played or practiced recently.
In terms of favorite composer, I mean, like I'm kind of like all over the map. I'll have my faces. I'll have composers that I like return back to, but then I'll get distracted by someone else. So like Schubert is a composer that I find myself returning back to often, in terms of like, I know he has a special place in my heart. And in terms of the ones that I get distracted with, like Kapustin is someone that I will frequently be like, oh, I want to go and learn like a classical jazz kind of mixed thing happening over there. In terms of a piece that I've played recently that I'm enjoying, I'm working with my piano duo partner right now, and we're playing some Argentinian pieces. So one that we're playing that I'm like kind of vibing with, and I'm starting to learn the flavor of that music, is Las Ninas, from the 3 Argentinian romances by Gustavino Rosario. It's a really, really interesting flavor. We're also doing like another Argentinian dance type of piece, and it goes through a whole bunch of meters. Like I'm starting off in like 3/4, and then it's like in 6/8, and then we're doing 5/4, 6/8, 5/4, 6/8, 5/4 for like 20 bars, a random 6/8 bar. But then that 6/8 bar is also a little bit in the enharmonic meter. So my right hand's in like 3/4, and my left hand is in 6/8. But he's doing like another polyrhythm on top. So we're just like trying to figure out these rhythms. Yeah, it's all like a little bit like organized chaos. So that's also been fun to practice.
Fun. Oh my gosh, especially like that style, I think is so cool. I just did my first time I did a piano duo, Scaramouche. Yeah, my first time playing it. It was so fun. We did we were gonna do the second and third movement, but we only had time for the third, which is the fun one. So it was like very upbeat, like I guess like Brazilian kind of flair, which was really cool.
Lots of fun to just explore other cultures' music and like getting that flavor. Yeah. And it just inspires you to just, take for what you're learning there and apply to the other pieces you'll be learning. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it's so fun. Yeah, I grew up like just sticking to like some of the classics and like just like simple pieces. So it's cool as I get older, you can kind of dabble into really anything you want, honestly. Thank you so much for your time. And just getting to know you, and your content I think is wonderful. So I'll continue to follow you, and I'm excited to share this like with everyone who will be watching at our academy.
I think what you're doing is really amazing. I'm so glad that you found this community both locally and online. This chat has been a lot of fun.
Well, have a good rest of your day.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, so that's it for our podcast today. Thank you so much to Michelle Lau for coming on and for taking the time to chat with us. Please check out her Instagram. But yeah, if you could take some time to check her out, she has a great resource for teachers, and her content is so fun and refreshing. But anyway, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, keep on creating.